Tec Sounds presents EduTrends.
Welcome to the EduTrends podcast, conversations with experts from around the globe about the discovery and creation of the future of higher education and lifelong learning. I am José Pepe Escamilla, Director of Tech Labs, an educational innovation unit of Tecnológico de Monterrey. Over the past 3 decades, I have been working on innovative pedagogies and learning technologies. I hope this EduTrends podcast will help us understand the future of learning. I traveled to Boston and talked with Jean Hammond, LearnLaunch Co-Founder. LearnLaunch is an education innovation hub which aims to empower innovators to expand access to high-quality education for all learners. Jean Hammond is an active angel investor focusing on early-stage, high-tech startups. She shared with us her vision on how can education evolve to meet the needs of students to cope with the challenges of the future. Also, we exchange ideas about entrepreneurship and diversity in EdTech ventures. I hope you find our talk interesting.
Jean, I'm very happy to be here in Boston with you in LearnLaunch. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here.
I know that you have a very tight schedule, so being so lucky to have a meeting with you in a short time. I'm very happy. Many people from Tec de Monterrey have come here. Our president has been here with Hakan, for instance, and he always talks about LearnLaunch. He says, we should do something like this in Tec de Monterrey.
Okay, that sounds great.
Great. So tell me, do you believe that education should be transformed?
Yes, education needs to go through a number of different changes. Some of them have to do, some of the disruption will come naturally because of the physical to digital transition that the industry is going through. And other industries that have gone through a physical to digital transition have a fairly substantial amount of change that happens in them as well. So the last little $3.5 trillion industry of media, music, and entertainment, when it went from physical to digital, lots of change. So education coming up towards $6 trillion of total spend worldwide, and probably hitting $10 trillion by 2030. High growth and a physical to digital transition all happening at once. And we have to change for a lot of other reasons too. We're not serving our students and learners to all the ways that they need to learn. We're not preparing people for the workforce of the future. And so we really need to make sure that we tune up the system to match with what's needed now and going to be needed in the future for people to have great employment and great lives.
So the first part of your answer is related to the digitalization of the educational industry compared to other industries like music. We are really far behind.
Way behind. The last major industry to start down this path, and sort of structural impediments caused by the way we've highly localized the early part of education, right? In other words, what we would call K-12 here, or primary secondary, is almost always very locally controlled. Sometimes the curricula comes in countrywide or statewide, but really lots of localness to it, because there's often, we're working with kids, we're working with people's kids. It's important that people be involved or have some feel that they're in control. But that's caused us to have a very slow-moving sort of, teachers are being trained the way teachers were trained decades ago, and so there's many impediments in the system. And then just simple facts. When we started LearnLaunch 6.5 years ago, probably in the U.S., only about 15, maybe 20% of the schoolrooms in K-12 schools had enough bandwidth to be able to deliver online products, and now it's estimated to be approximately 93 to 95% of the classrooms have enough bandwidth. So, hey, the teachers are trying new things out, and lots of changes happening as a result. So it's a combination of factors that are all involved in this transition. Probably the biggest of which is, in fact, teacher training. Teachers are uncomfortable with taking on something new without some amount of training, like any workforce, right? No workforce wants to be given a whole pile of new stuff without enough time to learn about it. But for some reason, it's just been a little extra slow in education.
So one of the things that I say to researchers in Tec de Monterrey is try to focus on the problem, not in the solution. No? So in the case of the industry of education, we know there should be more digitalization, but what are the problems?
Oh yes, the problems are pretty clear that we haven't understood, and this applies to everything, right? This applies to primary and secondary schools, it applies to colleges and universities, it applies to professional learning or job training kind of learning. We haven't sort of structured the information into the right size bites that people are able to learn it quickly. So learning science and brain science shows that, 10-minute bites of information followed by little assessments to nail the learning that we can see when we look at neurons light up exactly what works the best. And a long 55-minute lecture where everybody falls asleep at about 35 minutes, that's not the way to do it. So just lots of different things about the way we do things haven't been structured as best for the people who are receiving the information. We obviously have a non-engagement problem, lots of places across education. So what is it that it takes to engage? So some of that, again, has to do with the structure of the information, whether we make it a little bit more game-like, where you achieve the next level and then you sort of move up, or whether we make it a little bit more engaging through the use of other technologies. People all over the world are talking to speakers to tell them to, Alexa, play something. And so, why isn't speech recognition used in our education products? We don't know. So just there's lots of things that are available to us to work on this. And then, hiding underneath there is instructional design that actually puts the information into the right size bites for people to absorb.
And talking about education of adults, higher education or continuing education, lifelong learning, in some countries like in Chile and Mexico, higher education now by law is it's free and it's supposed to be accessible for everyone. Personally, I believe that higher education will change a lot in the future, in the following 10 to 20 years, and that some people will be going to other paths that will be recognized in the market, I will say, equivalent to a higher education. What kind of future do you see for adults in the following 10 to 20 years?
Even today, we have about 5 or 6 different business models all masquerading under the title higher education, right? Okay. And there couldn't be anything more different from, a small, local, relatively technically focused community college and a giant research institution that's really in the business of doing research. And yet we use the same word for them. Online schools have some quite different characteristics, both in who they serve and the mode in which they do it. So all of this is just happening, changing quite quickly. I certainly agree with you. I think that we need to help people understand pathways that get them to what they need to know, and then understand the idea that my job is changing. I need to go back, and maybe as a result of that certificate I got the last time, it's easy to do the next follow-on certificate that moves me into a slightly different way of thinking about it. You know, I don't think jobs are going to go away. What's going to happen is specific tasks are going to be automated. So maybe there's 5 people right now in the supply chain management group, but maybe with automation, one person will oversee what used to be 2 of those tasks and roles. And then because the automated procedures, once they're set up, can do huge parts of what used to be the job. And so I think that we'll see that kind of thing happening over and over again. And it also speaks to the kind of skills that are the most important, that are completely non-automatable, right? So communication skills, critical thinking, the ability to show business judgment, and
very like a human-like
and to
kind
work
of,
and to work in
skills,
teams.
no?
Yeah. So sometimes they're called soft skills. I think we call them soft skills because they're so hard.
Do you know how I call them? Power skills.
Power skills. I like that one. 21st century skills, soft skills, power skills. I like power skills because they definitely are the ones that make you be able to work in groups, which is how we do work.
And talking about other kind of skills, how did you become an entrepreneur?
So I had, after college, I had taken some time to work in a really small organization. So I had to look in and learn how to do the books and other things. And while I was doing that, I thought, you know, I actually do think I like business a lot. And started thinking about maybe going to business school. And so as a result, it turned out that at the time, MIT was having, still has, MIT Enterprise Forum. And so basically companies would come in and present, and then a group of sort of thinking people would ask them good questions, and everybody would watch. So it was sort of part of the entrepreneurship, early entrepreneurship days in Boston. And my husband and I don't think we were married at the time, but we were about to be married, loved going to those. They just were fun. It was a sort of exciting event. And so pretty soon I started taking classes that would move in that direction. And so by the time I went to business school, I was pretty sure I was interested in working in a startup at some point in time. At the time, and this is MIT, which is now well known for entrepreneurship, there were no classes in entrepreneurship. But I co-founded a company with some people that I worked with when we lived in Scotland, about 5 years out of business school. And that company was later acquired about 4 years later by 3Com. And then I went on to run a couple of companies for venture teams that wanted somebody with the kind of experience I had to do that. And during that time, I started also doing angel investing, since I'd had a great exit in that first company. And it turns out I love angel investing even more than entrepreneurship for myself, because I love coaching people through the process of entrepreneurship.
So I will say that you became an entrepreneur because you found that you like business and some kind of serendipity and self-taught courses. But do you think that we
also actually very interesting was the company I worked for when my husband's career took us to live in Scotland, and when I got there, there were about 30 people, a little less than 30 people, and when we left 2.5 years later, we'd grown to 350 people, and it was the very beginning of the computer networking surge, and we were a very significant supplier in Europe, and so by being the sort of token MBA on the ground, I was in every team. Oh, we need to figure out how much money to invest in each of our 4 product lines. We have to figure out a new process for manufacturing. What's the new distribution strategy for the Scandinavian countries? So I was on all those different teams, and so by the time it came time to found a company, it was like, oh yeah, I've done this already. So it was actually a wonderful learning experience. Being around any high-growth company is a great learning experience for somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur.
And sort of an informal learning experience. And do you think that entrepreneurship can be taught? Tec de Monterrey, we offer opportunities for students, courses. We have an incubator, an accelerator, et cetera, and we offer them opportunities.
I'm a big fan in the idea that many aspects of entrepreneurship can be taught. And in particular, the really important ones, which are focusing in on product market fit, making sure you understand exactly how that product will work in the marketplace and who to sell to. And if you get that right, then lots of the other processes they're small business processes, but they're not particularly hard. They're not hard in themselves. It's hard to do all of them at once. The problem with entrepreneurship is that this very small team is trying to do 18 things simultaneously, and there's not enough time, or there's not enough understanding about how to do all of them. And so that's the hard part, is doing all of it at once. And but if you get the product market fit right by really listening to the market, then many of the other parts are certainly achievable. And so what you can't teach is for people to feel comfortable in an environment of high uncertainty, right? Because entrepreneurship is uncertain. At any moment in time, you just don't know. Will we have enough money for this? Will that deal close? Will the developers get the product done on time? All that stuff it's a high uncertainty environment. If people feel very anxious in that environment, they shouldn't be there.
And it's probably something that can be taught.
Well, everything except for the ability to tolerate that uncertainty. Uncertainty is probably teachable, okay. but not everybody feels comfortable there, and nor should they. There's lots of great jobs out there that aren't entrepreneurship. It's just that entrepreneurial thinking, well, how do we solve the problem? How can we listen to the market? How can we get in and implement these changes is powerful no matter where you are. And then the fact of, I don't know if we have enough money to make payroll, is a condition of small enterprise that adds risk and other things.
When most of business now is international, no? So you have to think not only in your country or on your school system, the region you live, but in other places. And part of the things that we do in Tec de Monterrey is what we call global vision. We want our students to have this global vision. And a way of doing this is encouraging students to spend some time abroad. Around 60% of our students go abroad for a full semester experience in other countries. But there are some of them that for sometimes money reasons or other reasons cannot do this experience. What do you think about this kind of experiences abroad? Are they enriching? Are they worth?
Personally, when I finished high school, I hitchhiked around Europe for half a year. I love what I learned and how to think about how other people think and how other people live. And it was wonderfully personally. And so I think it's the best thing possible for people. But you don't have to go that far afield to get people who are, living in a different environment than you. And so there's lots of places to learn the issues of understanding how a mix of different people are thinking and understanding. And also with online today, you can get large parts of global experience remotely, whether it be taking some classes and participating in the discussions, across the ocean or around the world. All of those things are possible. It's not as overwhelming and exciting, but but lots of that can be done, and I just think that the problem of thinking about how others think is the most important part. I think or maybe not how they think. People think pretty similar. How they react to change. The other part is that because of the facts that I mentioned before, not all of the products we're inventing in EdTech are in fact going to be easily transportable. So even though it's easy to say, hey, once we're digital, it's a global world, all these products could be viewed from anywhere, it's not always true. It's not always true that the product will fit the educational product or courseware or method of delivery will fit exactly in other cultures, and so I think we'll have some differences.
It's a much more fragmented market than music, for instance. There's no Lady Gaga of
there's no Lady Gaga of education. Yeah, and even though the Khan Academy reaches many places, it doesn't actually do some of the most important parts of what's needed to engage people. Maybe Sesame Street. Maybe Sesame Street is the example of the globalness of some parts of education.
Yeah, interesting.
And YouTube, right? If you want to learn how to fix something, go to YouTube.
Go to YouTube. Yes. Well, YouTube is a way of for many people to learn, become more informal learners, and I believe that self-directed learning will be much more important in the future. When you were talking about this,
I think the trouble with the word self-directed is that people don't always know which are the high-value steps in their pathway.
Exactly.
And hence they sign up for fake opportunities that they think are going to be the right learning, and maybe they're not. And so again, quality control and how to make sure that people can get to the right bites at the right time, or they have the information for that. So actually I think we need lots of ways of helping people understand what's out there. And it's an industry that hasn't been good at sort of documenting the catalog, so to speak, in terms of saying, these are the ways that you could teach physics in high school, and here's some different ways that have been successful, which are the best ones, and which ones will fit for your learners. And it's almost like we don't have a Consumer Reports magazine for education. We know more about whether that washing machine will help me wash heavy rugs than we know about whether that physics class will be actually a good fit for the type of learner that I'm bringing to them.
So mentoring people through their careers is a business opportunity.
Yes, it is, actually. So here in the States, where there's more venture funding for EdTech than in lots of parts of the world, but it's still remarkably small compared to the percent of GDP that it is. Education is about 8% of GDP, and venture investing is less than 1% of all venture investing goes into education. And so a little bit of growth and workforce EdTech, as we get new startups showing up in the skilling and reskilling around the workforce, we see a little bit more money coming in from traditional venture as opposed to education specialists and impact investors. But even so, there's definitely a. Oops, I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
We were talking about entrepreneurship and mentorship as mentoring people in their careers.
Yes, yeah. So definitely. So one of the things that we noticed was that that of the 10 unicorn EdTech companies last year, companies that reached a valuation around $1 billion, 7 of them are from China. And all of those, except for VIP Kid, are all about prepping for college and getting ready for college or having enrichment at high school or other things like that. And some of those in the U.S. wouldn't be in the education industry because youngsters get support from going to camp or something like that. And so the camp industry isn't thought a part of the education industry, even though, in fact, it's some of the things that get taught there. But there was a person in here from a large Chinese company who was describing to me that not only did he help with prepping for college, but he helped pick exactly what's the right program to go into in college. Mm-hmm. And then as they're getting ready to graduate from college, he'd pick them back up again and help them with career planning, mm-hmm. including additional educational opportunities going forward. So that kind of sort of view of thinking about that, yep, it's an opportunity, and really needed because with a high rate of change of where the jobs are and things like that, people don't know. People don't know that there's, huge numbers of cybersecurity and data analyst jobs going unfilled, and yet they're still training for something else, some job that may not be there pretty soon.
That is not a job.
Because they don't know the rate of change of where the jobs are.
I imagine that you have invested in 200 companies or more than that.
As an angel investor, yeah.
Yeah, as an angel investor, and you talk to these investors frequently. Have you find a pattern of what EdTech investors are good at and what are they bad at?
Okay, so a couple of things. Well, one of the reasons we formed LearnLaunch was my experience of having gotten together a number of companies that were trying to do things for kids or education, and then finding that my friends in the angel community were like, scary, hard, don't want to invest there. And so looking at that, I felt that that an accelerator, maybe I should describe the whole LearnLaunch system a bit too. Mm-hmm. So I'll do this accelerator one first. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So looking at that, I felt that an accelerator would really be a great way to help the companies get a little further along, and also help me be able to provide more knowledge to the next stage investors. So I could say, oh, here's this company, they've been doing this, this, and this. They still need to work on that, and that's something that you really know how to do. Mr. Angel Investor, why don't you get involved? So I could actually sort of tailor things more accurately. And then for the later stage companies, same thing with venture firms. Hey, this company's gotten to this stage. I think the opportunity space looks like this. Let's take a look. And so really trying to sort of help with the companies, with the investors being able to understand where the company was. And in fact, one of our big differentiators at our accelerator is that we provide a tiny bit of funding as the companies come into the accelerator, and then just a little ways in, we sit down and together write milestones for a snapshot that we're going to take 6 months later. So 6 months, what will your company look like? What will revenues be? What will be in the leads? Will you have filled the position for somebody to head up marketing? What's happening about the product? The product roadmap, and where will you be on that? So sort of, what kind of impact will you be having with the product? So sort of imagining a snapshot for 6 months later. We write it down, we sign it as a contract, and then they're eligible for substantially more funding based on hitting the milestones. So the idea is you hit 100% of the milestones, you get 100% of the follow-on funding. So we have two programs. We have Boost for super early stage company, well, not super, but should be companies that are just that have product, but they're still finalizing product market fit. And so maybe a little bit of shipping, a little bit of revenue, but really quite early. And they stay with us for about 3.5 months, and then they get $20,000 when they start, and the milestone payments can total $50,000. Our later stage companies that have revenues in the $250,000 range get $50K when they come in, and they have milestone payments up to $70. So again, just enough money to keep them interested, but perhaps more importantly, that list of things, achievements that they need to show back to us as a part of getting those payments are exactly the kind of things that follow-on investors are looking for. So sort of an understanding of where they are for angel-level companies and due diligence-ready materials for venture for the later crowd. So it's one of the things that we think is especially useful for our companies in the way we run our accelerator.
But what was different from this accelerator, or what you do with the tech accelerators to other accelerators, in particular in the EdTech field?
Yeah, so we spend lots and lots of time really understanding the industry, understanding who really is the buyer, who's the influencer on the buyer, and then just working specifically with those companies. So if this company needs to be selling to that type of community college, we get people from those types of institutions to be amongst the mentors and actually help them figure it out and get it going. And so, we unleash over 170 mentors on our accelerator folks. So at any point in time, probably only 30 or so are working with the companies, but lots of people want to come in and help. And then in addition, we have a role we call venture partner, which are senior industry players, and each one acts as a guardian angel for one of the companies as they go through the program. So a weekly call just to make sure that they're utilizing the resources, that the resources they need are becoming available. So we spend lots of time going out and getting company-specific resources and applying them directly on the companies. So very, very, very sort of customized. And more recently, we've been building out our set of folks that can work on workforce EdTech companies, because we see a lot of companies being formed that we think of as being about the skilling and reskilling issues. And sometimes they're subject-specific, like home health care aid training, and sometimes they're more process like, how to do assessments at an advanced level for different types of skills.
And as a woman entrepreneur, have you faced some difficulties? How many women are doing entrepreneurship in the United States right now? And do you think that's enough, or should be more than that?
Oh, well, so the facts are pretty clear. The venture community is particularly bad, both at employing women in decision-making roles and in investing in women. And so most years, something between 2 and 4% of the total venture funding goes to women. And it's clear that women have more than 2 and 4% of the good ideas. So for me personally, I think I was stubborn and didn't notice very much, but there's no doubt that I had a tough time. I don't even think I knew what the word mentor meant, much less go out and effectively use them during the time I was both a co-founder of Axon Networks and a CEO at Quarry and other places. But by being an angel investor, I figured out exactly how tough it was. And later I brought a branch of Golden Seeds to Boston. So I'd been an angel for about 3 or 4 years, and then Golden Seeds is a investment group that requires that there's a senior leader in the management team of the company in order to invest. So the investment thesis is that diverse teams make better decisions, and if you don't have a woman in your top 3 to 5 senior leaders of the company, you don't have a diverse enough team. And so Golden Seeds has unleashed billions of dollars with the follow-on funding amongst the companies they've invested in over time. And during the time that we were doing that, the other angel groups woke up, smelled the coffee, and started moving too. So in angel group investing right now, not only about 30% of the angels are women, but also about 30% of the funding is going to women, in marked contrast to the continued.
Sorry, those numbers are in Boston or in the United States?
They're pretty much U.S.-wide for angel groups, not individual angels just investing on their own, but people who like to do it in a group mode. So about 25 to 30% of the members are women, and 25 to 30% of the invested funds through this type of process, angel group investing, go out to women-led or women highly participated companies. Which took a long time, and will keep taking a long time because it's what it is. It's a lot of investors invest in folks that look like them, and if the core of the people who are doing the investing are male, then they have this tendency to invest in male entrepreneurs. But we work really hard with our teams to make sure that they keep building up diversity in the companies that come through the accelerator, build up diversity in the team, et cetera, as one of the criteria for that follow-on funding.
So the main selling point is that diversity is good for business.
It is. It's easy to see. You can see McKinsey studies and other things that show if the senior leadership in publicly traded companies and that they also have diverse boards of directors, you can see that they outperform their peers in that industry by significant percents. So documented over and over again in studies that diverse teams make better decisions. And again, back to the core problem that's happening in a startup, which is, are you listening to the market? And so whatever market you're serving, there's women in it. So probably can listen a little better if you're a touch more attuned to that market. And the same issues around various other minority groups too, right? All of these groups need to get a hold of the entrepreneurship story, the entrepreneurship thinking, and to some extent be a part of the entrepreneurial surge that hopefully will remake the lots of things in time, in time for global warming, in time for education change before automation comes, in time for, or intense automation comes, but, in time for all these different things. So all of these have to be, working in time. That's why we need entrepreneurship, is to do it all in time.
All in time. Are there any recommendations you will give to a woman that wants to become an entrepreneur?
I think there's three things. One is most women entrepreneurs really do this, which is do your homework. Make sure that you definitely understand your financial model, that you know what you're talking about. The second is to turn the question around. So what's happening right now is that there's lots of research that shows that when if you watch two teams and one's male-led and one's female-led, that in general the males will get questions that are, well, how big is that opportunity? How could you grow it to that additional side market? And women will mostly get questions that are, well, could you prove that market's there? Or how would you guarantee that this would happen? Or that change will happen in time. And so the question is to turn it around and to say, if they ask you a question that puts you on the defensive, to turn it around and say, well, not only is the market big enough, but here's how we can prove it and go on to prove these other things. So to not take the defensive stance, because it turns out that the bias is coming in the question. You have to remove the bias and push it back.
So there's research that women get asked more tough questions than males.
Yes, lots of it. In fact, they took TechCrunch and did a full analysis and saw the bias. It's a really interesting set of materials. And then the last one is a little bit to me, which is lots of times we'll see women will be describing the business that they know very, very well, the one that they've modeled out, and that's the core thing that they describe, and it's a pretty interesting business, but in many cases the male presenter pushes past that in their presentation too. And so they say, oh, me and my brilliant team will add an additional product by month 14. Oh, and there's going to be a services requirement here. So in the end of the day, many times the male presenter will be including sort of futures that aren't fully baked yet, but are likely to be there, and sort of, yep. And then when we're going up like this, we're going to go up like this too. And it's sort of it's sort of an optimism about things we don't yet have nailed down, and the tendency for women is to present what they know really, really well and can defend, instead of sort of pushing out in this direction. And so people say, is it a lack of...
So we brag a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. I'd say that guys just have a tendency to kind of over-promote in all ways. Yeah, so I just say, yeah, you got to assume that you and your brilliant team will, in fact, add that extra product, do this one more thing, and just, because investors as a whole are going to be discounting your numbers anyhow, so pushing them a touch and making sure that you take the optimistic side of how you tell the story is just fine. And so sort of three different things. You really have to have it nailed. None of this just pretend it's okay. You got to say the positive and turn it back toward the positive, and then go ahead, step out of your comfort zone a tiny bit and tell the slightly bigger story. I remember once when I was fundraising for a company I was the CEO of called Corey Technologies. Here in the Boston area, we would just describe the core market and then these other two markets that we might fit in. Say, ooh, those are really big taken together. But when I got to California, they would always say, well, where's your other slide? And I was like, well, what's that? And I started calling it the rule of the world slide. So basically the idea that you could describe how this could become an important component in many, many ways. And so really,
rule of the world.
Rule of the world slide. Yeah. So think big at some point in your story.
Like conquer the world, like Pinky and Brain.
Yeah.
I have a friend in the university, Tec de Monterrey, that study women in entrepreneurship, and there's a cultural thing in different countries, I think, and in particular in Mexico, she found out that women are not as good at networking as men. And the explanation that she gave to that in the interviews is that socially it's not the same for a man to say he knew someone new, let's go have a dinner, let's do business. And a woman doing that can be perceived differently in the culture, which is sometimes unfair, no?
Yeah.
I don't know if it happens in other parts of the world.
Yeah, although I think there's lots of benign networking environments, certainly conferences and things like that, where having that coffee or whatever is just fine, and so I think that people can get to that point. I do think that women need to make sure that they do get a list, sort of a list of advisors and mentors that they check in with pretty often. And actually, when I look at my own behavior back when I was younger, I would think, oh, I can't bother them. Whereas, in fact, now I know, people love being bothered, right? I mean, they don't love being bothered, but they love the idea that somebody thinks, oh, you have the expertise I need to talk to you. And so finding people
are generous.
People are generous, particularly if they feel like you value their insights. And so making sure that you're pretty rigorous about going out and getting that kind of advice that will help put you in the environment where somebody will remember and bring to the next stage, and it is a confidence to ask, right? So people say, oh, women are less confident. No, they're not less confident. They just don't always know, like these kind of social norms, the confidence to ask for a little more help or to ask for another meeting about this or for an introduction to a certain person. So all of that is in fact a learned skill and needs to be practiced. It's kind of a muscle. You need to exercise that muscle so you can get good at it.
So we are getting toward the end of our interview. Is there any recommendation that you want to make in general to tech entrepreneurs, and if you want to invite them also to LearnLaunch?
Sure. So let me start with a really short description of LearnLaunch at large. So when we started founding LearnLaunch, we realized that we needed to bring the community together, and so we have quite a few little classes and meetups, and then we have a big conference each year. About 1,500 people come, and you guys are all welcome to come up. It's always in Boston, right around February 1st, and it's really cold, and so but a very discussive conference with lots of really good panels that put together the different perspectives. We call it across boundaries because we don't want all the teachers over in that corner and all the investors over in that corner. We want people with different perspectives on the same panel discussing it. If we need a parent perspective on a panel, or a superintendent, or a college professor, or whatever, we try to put together really discussive panels, or people who are involved in supporting the workforce training part of the world. So we want to bring people together. We have a pretty good newsletter people can read, and then we also have this co-working space that you're in. So we're always welcoming people to come that want to spend a little bit of time. They're always welcome to just stop by. If they want to rent a desk for a month and then be here in Boston to have time to sort of check out the community and get to know people and get to go out to the different universities around town and other things. Love to support that. And if a company's thinking about moving to the U.S., Boston is a great place to move. If you're an EdTech company, over 26,000 people are employed in education technology, not counting anybody who works in a school or a university. So somebody has just left the Pearson facility down the street, or is about to leave one of the other big groups that work on education here, and they're ready to be your instructional designer or whatever. So lots of expertise, and then the accelerator. So the accelerator has a lot of different programs open at different points in time. We've just announced an early stage program, what we would ordinarily call our Boost program, with a special focus on skills for the new economy and language learning. And we're actually going to be doing that cohort and a couple of other cohorts with a major education institution. But at any point in time, the accelerator is about to have applications open, and it's a great way to come in. About 10 out of the 58 companies that have been through the accelerator have come from other countries. And in general, we help them with being successful in the U.S. market, but we're also happy to help with anything, and we'd love to see great new ideas.
That's great. Thank you very much for your generosity, and I expect that also there will be people that will come to your conference and maybe sign up for your accelerator, hopefully more women also.
Yeah. Oh, and we've had almost 50% of the leaders of our EdTech companies have a woman founder or co-founder.
That's
so one more thing. So I'll say that. Sure. So we've just announced a new cohort for our early stage sort of boost level accelerators, and we're going to be announcing in a week that our partner in that new type of accelerator is Education Testing Service, the big assessment company, and they'll be providing extra testing resources for anybody who's involved in that cohort. Applications close about July 10th, though.
Okay, so we know that it's happening.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much, Jean.
For more information, visit observatory.tech.mx/EduTrends podcast. Thanks to Tecnológico de Monterrey and the Tec Sounds team. Tec Sounds producer, Miguel Mejia. EduTrends producer, Esteban Venegas and Christian Guijosa. Post-production, Max Perez. Stay tuned for the next episode of EduTrends and visit Tec Sounds in your favorite podcast app for other great shows and content.